Hi, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to the episode of Fox Talks. Tonight we're joined by Rachel LoRusso. She's an employee for Mass General, and she had COVID-19, and she's going to talk to us tonight about her experiences of having an illness that's involved in one of the biggest pandemics in world history. So, Rachel, how are you feeling now?
Well, I'm back at work, feeling a lot better. Thank you. The only thing I still have residual is like a little bit of a cough, and some fatigue, still gaining my strength back, but I can definitely tell the, Corona has evacuated my body.
So I know early on, back in March, people started going on social media, almost like a witch hunt. There were a couple cases reported. The Board of Health said, "Oh, there's a couple cases, a few people had died," and this kind of like, well, who has it? And then you ended up getting it in April, right?
Yeah, the middle of April.
Middle of April. So you had in April. So you missed that first kind of witch hunt wave.
Yes.
And you were pretty open about having it, where a lot of people were very concerned. So what led you to kind of reveal that to people?
I think by nature, I tend to be a little bit of an open book anyway. But I don't think it's something, once they started knowing more about it, and I just felt like, I don't want to say I got it for a reason, but I just felt like I had like a sense of duty, to sort of share my story, to either, squash some people's fears that they might have, or tell people how serious it really is, show people that there really is no poster child, for lack of a better phrase, for the coronavirus. It doesn't discriminate. Maybe it targets certain age brackets, or we've heard certain ethnicities mentioned that it might tend to affect more. But I got it. I'm not elderly. I'm Caucasian. I'm fairly healthy as far as I'm concerned. I don't have any major pre-existing conditions, and yet I still felt pretty ill with it. I know there's people that have had it not as bad as me. Tom didn't have it. My boyfriend didn't have it as bad as me, but I also saw other people while I was in the hospital that were way worse off than me. So it definitely runs the gamut.
Do you know where you got it from, or did you just kind of wake up and there it was?
Honestly, that's a question that I've gotten quite a bit. And I wish I can tell you where I got it, but I can tell you, so where I work at Mass General, and I'm a patient coordinator, and where my office is in the Yawkey building it's pretty isolated right now. We're not seeing any patients at all, only urgent, and mostly, so I work in an access and call center. So my office right now is like a ghost town, and nobody else in my office, for the few that are there, the skeleton crew that are there, nobody else has had it. And to my knowledge anyway. And then, I don't think I got it there. It could have been the supermarket. It could have been, Tom had it too. He could have been from his work. I mean, you never know. Honestly, you really never know. It's unfortunately, no clue.
Now you have a daughter, Liz. What did you do with her? Because if you both got sick in the same house, you must try to protect her.
That was really hard because she was not with Tom and I for the better part of a month. She went to stay with her dad. I give major props to him because he stepped up without a single iota of complaints or anything, and took care of her for the better part of a month. And, she would come over and like stand on the lawn, and a couple of times, we didn't want to do it too much, but she would come over, stand on the lawn, and we would have like a major social distant visit because, for a girl to be without her mom, for a month, that's crazy. Or a dad, or a Tom, because, they're pretty close too. So, that was for her, and she was negative. So there was no question that she had to go stay with her dad.
You don't want it to spread to her as well. I mean, if you're
right.
Three people in a house, I mean, that's a pretty transmittable disease.
Yeah, definitely.
So what were your first symptoms? Was it just the cough? You didn't feel well? How would you describe it?
Woke up, so it was Friday, I'm not sure of the date, Friday the 17th of April, I think. I had like a headache all day, but I didn't pay attention to it. Everybody gets a headache.
Mm-hmm.
Started getting a little achy at night. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And at that point, I didn't even think anything of it, that it was COVID, nothing like that, because who would think? Went to bed, woke up in the morning with major flu-like symptoms, body aches, slight fever, headache still, nausea, no cough yet. I didn't have any respiratory symptoms right away. And then Tom he left the room for a minute, like when I woke up, when I was like, oh, babe, I don't feel good. Left the room for a minute, came back in. He looked at me and he said, I just kind of walked around the house smelling a bunch of things and I can't smell a thing. I was like, okay. And I'm thinking,
Which is another one of the symptoms. You sense of smell.
Yes, correct. And that's like a major, major telltale sign, especially one of the beginning symptoms, I guess. And he, at that point, didn't have any other symptoms other than the loss of smell and loss of taste. We thought about it. We're like, okay, let's not jump to conclusions. I'm thinking maybe he's a little paranoid. Who knows? So as the day went on Saturday, I started feeling a little bit worse, and then went to bed, woke up Sunday, and my severity of symptoms had literally doubled. I was like, I couldn't get out of bed. The body aches were so bad. I actually didn't sleep much that night either, because the body aches were just getting worse and worse. They were horrible. Like, I've never felt pain like that, like all over my body. Fever, the fever had gone up a little bit more. At that point, it was like around 101. The headache I still had started to get nauseous. And at that point, I called my PCP, and my PCP said, you need to go in. So to get tested. So I at Mass General has an employee COVID-19 hotline. Mm-hmm. So I called the hotline and they said, yes, you need to go get tested. And Tom, with his symptoms, they said, well, we'll get him tested too. So we both went to Newton Wells Hospital, got tested, came home, and my symptoms again were just there, and like they were like a revolving door, like just in constant rotation. One symptom would come, another would go, something new would come. Woke up Monday morning at 8:30, didn't sleep again Sunday night. Woke up at around 8:30 from a call from my PCP telling us that both Tom and I tested positive. And I think I was in denial, because when I heard it, I was like, what? No. And I was definitely in denial on some
You must have known. I mean, you could.
Well, yeah.
Pretty reasonable guesses.
I was feeling. Right. So Tom started feeling sick, I think, on Tuesday. His symptoms lasted about 3 days, and then woke up like that week, like Thursday, feeling like, I was like, I think I don't have it anymore. And me, I was just getting worse.
Yeah.
I got new symptoms of like nausea. I couldn't eat. The body aches. I had shakes, really called rigors, and I was shaking, so like violently shaking. And then exactly a week after we tested positive, I woke up 3:00 in the morning the following Monday, and I woke up with 104 fever, couldn't breathe, my chest hurt. I couldn't even take like a quarter of a breath in. It was crazy. Shaking violently, dripping sweat. And when I first tested positive, my primary care doctor said, you need to go get an oximeter to test your oxygen regularly. So I tested my oxygen then, and it was like, normally people run anywhere from like 96 to 100%. And mine was like 82, which is 82 to 85. It was really low. Called my PCP, talked to the on-call doctor, and they said, you need to go to the hospital now. And I didn't want to go because I was scared. I was terrified. because I didn't know what was going to happen next. You don't know what's happening with your body next. You don't know. So 4:00, Tom and I were driving to Mass General emergency room. He left me there, and yeah, it was pretty scary because both of us talked about it later. Hindsight is 2020, and I literally didn't know if I was coming home. Like it was that scary. Yes, I felt that sick, but it was also, you could go from the state that I was in to even 10 times worse and wind up on a ventilator or intubated. And Tom said he went home and he didn't sleep at all that night, but he didn't know if I was coming home or not. So it was really scary. After the first day though, that fear kind of, as I started, my symptoms were getting controlled. I was on constant oxygen for 4 days. And on day 4, I was there like 4.5 days. I was at the point, I had a roommate who was an elderly lady, and I felt so bad because she was in a lot of pain. And she was screaming all night long. So I was not getting any sleep at all. I literally, the 4th day when they tested my oxygen was actually staying up, and they were kind of considering sending me home. I said, no, you need to send me home because you're not doing anything for me anymore that I can't do at home. Taking over-the-counter medications to control the symptoms now that my oxygen was back up and staying up on its own. So
is that basically all they do for you, though? Fluids, oxygen, and Tylenol, and that's just
pretty much,
you?
Yeah. Really, that was really all they could do. There's no, there's all these experimental medications, but I don't want to be a guinea pig. Granted, the research they're doing is wonderful, but I didn't want to be one of those people. I was already feeling like a death story. So it was literally oxygen, like ibuprofen or Tylenol, and any other thing they could throw at me to treat one of the, dozen symptoms that I was having.
Right. You have a headache, so here's ibuprofen. You're losing fluid. Here's an IV, because if you have nausea, you're not going to drink any water. So you've got to, adapt. And
right.
So what was it like being, so I assume you were one of the COVID wings they had set up there. What was that experience like? I know you had a roommate who would scream in pain.
Outside of that, the care at Mass General was, I was in awe. They came into their room with full gown, face mask, face shields, gloves, obviously. And every time they would come in the room or leave the room, they take off the gown, put on a new gown the next time they come in. So they were, geared up head to toe. Yet the whole floor was a COVID floor. So I didn't even have to wear a mask because I was already infected. So was everybody else. Right.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but when you're on that floor, it's like,
well, it's true.
you're the enemy to all the nurses and doctors. And you're like, I don't need to wear the mask. I've already got it.
Yeah. The care was unparalleled. I didn't feel like I had an illness that these caregivers were afraid to catch. They treated you like a human. They treated you like they cared about you. Nurturing, caring, and honestly, every person that came into my room, whether it be doctor, nurse, people cleaning my room, delivering my food, I thanked every single one of them because they're putting their lives at risk. Even the people changing the garbage barrels in the room, they're there. They're fully geared up too. They're in their room. So it was. It was exhausting because, again, didn't get me sleep, but the care itself was amazing. And it was just happy. They just were so caring.
When you checked out, I know there's been stories on the news where they play bells or music. Was there anything special they did when you left the hospital, or?
No, I did. I actually cracked a joke about that with all my friends. I'm like, I didn't get the bed rolling down the hallway and cheering and chanting, and I think it's probably because there was people a lot worse off than me.
And I get the impression if you're at Mass General, that's usually for illnesses like the worst of the worst goes to Mass General, so It's not a celebratory thing as much there.
Right. There was actually a lot, I guess, one of my fears, and honestly, when I was in the emergency room, I was so scared. I asked the physician who was doing my intake. First thing I asked was, before we go any further, I need to know, am I going to wind up on a ventilator or intubated? Because that was my biggest fear, because you hear so much about people going on those things and not coming off and not surviving. And she looked at me and she said, okay, this is what I'm going to tell you. Looking at you right now, how you are right now, not to negate what you're feeling, because you're very sick. But right now, at this moment in time, looking at you, the people that we wind up putting on ventilators or intubated are a lot worse than what you are right now. So in other words, she didn't want to say, no, you're going to be fine, because they didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow.
It could change easily. As you know, you felt worse off and on over a matter of days. It easily could have gotten even worse than it felt. So
Right. So, it was, that's what she said to me. And it was enough to sort of calm me down and out of my hysterics. But, still scary thing to go through, for sure.
So when you were released there and you went home, how long did you stay isolated at home? Or are you still isolated? It's been over a month now since you left the hospital.
So I came home, and I was still sick for at least another week and a half after that. Probably, I don't want to say 2 weeks, about a week and a half to 2 weeks after that, I was still sick. And Mass General at the time, the protocol was you had to have all symptoms resolved, and then you had to test negative twice. Mm-hmm. And the test had to be at least 24 hours apart. I was lucky. So it took about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, before I was completely what I considered symptom free. I went and I had it took 3 days pretty much to get my 2 negative tests. It was pretty fast. I was very lucky. A friend of mine who actually works in the employee hotline at Mass General said that it's pretty rare for somebody to have it and then test negative so quickly right away. But I was very lucky that happened. So I was back to work. I forget what day I went back to work, but I went back to work actually got my 2 negatives, and then Tom got his negative like the same day. And then my daughter came home, but I took an extra 4 days, because it even though I tested negative, it still riddles your body. Like the healing process is weeks and weeks. I'm still healing on some level. Still have the cough and fatigue on some level, but I can feel myself getting stronger week to week.
So when you see the kind of the lockdown continues, as someone who had the illness, do you think that's a good idea to try and prevent it, or do you think it's time to start things back up again?
I think I agree with things still being the way they are. I haven't looked at a lot of statistics, but I thought I heard like a week ago or something that the state of Massachusetts, our numbers had come down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because we're one of the states that's been, sort of on extra hyper alert and, slower to get back to things. And I think that's the reason why. One thing I've always said, I don't believe in, outing people that have been out in society, because there's so many layers to this COVID-19. You don't have mm-hmm. to have it to be affected by it. Being stuck at home in your house for weeks and weeks and weeks is, it causes depression and anxiety and fear, and cabin fever is a real thing. Yep. And I don't agree with how quickly some people went out, but I'm not as quick to persecute them as others, because I can understand it, because I was stuck at home because I had it. I do agree with the way we're handling things. And I do think these phases need to be done very carefully, to the point that if the numbers start to go back up, they need to stop, and we need to go back to doing it the way we were. So,
So are you going into the office, or are you getting to work from home at least?
no, I'm back in the
Back at
office
the office.
gladly. My building is still very, a barren wasteland.
Yep.
Still get to go in and feel very safe. Mass General's precautions are very extensive. They have very few entrances and exits to the hospital open, and each one of those is barricaded with long tables and staff with hand sanitizer and masks. And they're not just letting anybody in there.
Mm-hmm.
The sad part of it is if you wind up in the hospital, knock on wood, nobody does, but for whatever reason, no visitors are allowed. There's poor women having babies without their partners there. I don't know if that's changed, but I still think it's that way. There's no visiting, all unnecessary, all elective up until recently. Now we're starting to open things back up, but up until recently, all elective appointments had been canceled and stricken from the books. We've been doing video appointments or telemedicine, which is telephone calls. Only extremely urgent cases will be seen, I mean, for pediatrics anyway, where I work in the pediatric clinics.
So what's it like being on the other side of all of this? So you work for probably the biggest hospital group in the state, and here you are, a patient in said hospital. I mean, that must have been a experience to have.
Yeah, it was, in my role, what I do is I help parents navigate the medical specialties for their children. That's my position as I'm a coordinator. You call and you need an appointment, and I help you figure out what it is you need. We help get you scheduled and all that stuff, as well as other roles that I have in my position. But but I have other close family that work at the hospital on the front lines, not doing what I do. I didn't get the full extent of what they do until I was a patient, and to be a patient and to get the care. And I know Mass General is amazing. I've been in the Partners healthcare system working for almost 20 years. So I know that it's a great, we have best hospitals in Boston. But to be on the opposite side of it was quite an experience, like to this level, because I've never had care. I've never needed care like that at Mass General before. I've had back surgery, and that was amazing. But to be in this type of critical level of care was unparalleled. I was in awe, honestly. I mean, I left home, went to bed. What first thing I did when I woke up the next morning was send flowers to the floor of all the people that took care of me, because I was just amazed.
I can't imagine going in, working at a hospital, doctor, nurse, any support staff, and knowing that you're walking into a floor like that where there's disease that you could be the next one to have it. And there's not much you can do about it. I mean, they wear the mask, the gloves, the shield, but there's still no guarantee that it won't get to them. It could be on the train on the ride home when you're sitting next to somebody else. So you just never know.
Right.
So what precautions are you taking now that do you wear a mask when you go out, or do you just, what do you do?
I do. I've been sort of like, the moment I came out of the hospital, I was on hyper alert. Clearly I came home and I had to stay, still isolated. But the moment I was able, once Maya came home, or even before that, once I got my 2 negatives, Tom and I would go for rides, where there's nobody else. As time has gone on, we've sort of loosened that a little bit. I started to go into the supermarket again, always wearing a mask. For me, that helps ease my anxiety with catching it again, because
you never know if you could get it again. They don't really know.
You can't. Right. So originally they first thought that once you get it, you can't get it again, or for a while anyway, because you build up an immunity. But I don't want to misinform anybody, but I think, so I had called the employee hotline back the first day I got back to work. the first thing I wanted was my antibodies tested. Like I want to know that I have antibodies, that I'm immune to catching it again, right away. Like I was so gung ho. I was calling research people and my PCP, and nobody's doing the antibody testing as rigorously as they were before, because they're finding it's not as accurate, and that people have gotten it again. So, yeah. So
not something you want to go through a second time.
No, not really. No, once was enough. But yeah, we're still pretty cautious. We visited with friends, but we do social distance visiting. Like we'll stay outside or, that type of thing. I'm an open book. I'm not going to lie. I've visited with friends because now that I'm, negative and I'm back out there, we still use precaution, but we all need to, I think you can slowly start to get back out there, but you have to do it with care and caution and not just think about yourself, but others too, So, did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being so open with everything you experienced. I think it's important to have someone who's willing to talk about those experiences. I mean, as you know, the witch hunts that were going on, and someone in farmland was sick, and I was like, oh, basically burned to the ground because someone was sick in farmland, and you've recovered from it, and you're willing to share those experiences. So I think it's really important for people to hear.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you.
You too. Take care, Brian.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.